Hello everybody, welcome to a special edition of the D-Pad Discourse. I'm Brad Davis and we are finally here. We're at the cusp of the launches of the PS5 and the Xbox Series X as well as Xbox Series S. It's a very exciting time. It's been a very crazy year, especially with COVID-19. As you can see on my nose, I have a mark from wearing a face mask. I don't know if that shows up on the camera right now, but it's just been a really crazy year. And while video games are very far less important than what's going on right now, it's still a good thing just to have a break for just a minute in terms of what's going on, and to just be able to just celebrate the fact that we have something coming that we anticipated for years now. So I will say that I am getting both systems. I do have both systems ordered, and I will have both systems this week. I am planning to make more videos on both systems once I get used to them and play their games as well as their features. But overall, I'm really excited. There's not much in terms of true exclusives coming to either system, and that's pretty surprising, especially on the side of the PS5. We've known for months now, probably even years now, that Microsoft was going towards a strategy in which they put their first-party titles on various Xbox models. And we thought, at least many people did think, that Sony would be going for the more traditional route in terms of making games that were true exclusives. But what's funny is that pretty last minute, during one of their later press conferences, they announced that multiple games coming to the PS5 will also be on the PS4, such as Spider-Man as well as the new Horizon coming soon. So that surprised many people because they felt that, they made all these comments towards Xbox when it came to them treating generations differently. And, just a few weeks after they made those statements, came the news that multiple PS5 games will also be on the PS4. So overall, even if you aren't going to get a new console this year, you still have a lot of games to play and you won't really feel completely missed out, which I think is a good thing, especially in terms of a game like Spider-Man Miles Morales. Miles Morales is a character that appeals to various ages, and many kids, especially kids that are attracted to Miles Morales, they aren't of a background in which they will be able to purchase, or their parents will be able to purchase, a new console as soon as it releases. So the fact that they'll be able to still play the game with other people and be in the conversation as everybody talks about the game as they play it via their old PS4, that's, in my opinion, that is a good thing. And you could criticize, and I personally did criticize Sony for doing kind of like a 180 in terms of them saying, we are focused on exclusives, we want this gen to feel like a new experience. But then just weeks after that, they announced that they will release their games also on the PS4. I did criticize Sony for that, but the more that I thought about it, the more that I realized that what Sony did, even if it might not have been their intention, what Sony did was actually pretty clever in the sense that it showed that people really do not know when a game is cross-gen unless you tell them. Because before it was confirmed that Spider-Man Miles Morales was a cross-gen game, people thought that it was a PS5 exclusive, and many people felt that it looked next gen. People were really impressed with the game. Nobody was saying that this looks cross-gen or this looks like a poor game, especially for the launch of the PS5. No one said that. Everybody was impressed with the way the game looked, pretty much. And then when the news came out that it was cross-gen, people were surprised, and people, they didn't really criticize it much because they were just so used to thinking and feeling that the game would be PS5 only, that they just at that point, it just didn't care, which I felt was funny too, and kind of hypocritical, but still it's funny. And it goes back to my point that people want these new consoles for better graphics and just having better games overall than what they play on their old console, even if the games are on those old consoles. And a game like Spider-Man showed that, because people are still hyped for the game, even though it's coming to the PS4. And I do feel that this also ties into the Xbox's strategy, because it shows that their strategy is pretty smart. And I do also feel that it's smart when it comes to just the overall budgets of these games. Budgets are greatly rising in terms of game development, and you can't release a game on just a next-gen system that's expensive and has a user base of a couple million. That's just not really wise in this day and age, especially when these consoles have backwards compatibility. So releasing games on multiple platforms is, in my opinion, the way to go. And then once the new consoles have big enough user bases for you to then detach yourself from the predecessor console, then that's when it makes sense to push out more next-gen only games, in my opinion, because then you have a big enough user base to support that game on that new console that's still pretty expensive, more than likely. And then that's, again, smart, because what we saw back when the PS4 and the Xbox One were brand new, we saw a lot of games that were solid still flop because the sales just weren't there, because people weren't buying those games, and those games were of more of a specific interest. They were more, you had to be more of like a hardcore gamer, in my opinion, in order to have a true interest in some of those early games. But if those games were cross-gen, those games more likely would have done better, because they would have been available to a bigger audience. So I do feel that what we're seeing now with the launches of both the PS5 and the Xbox Series X and S is smart, and it will cause games to have big enough launches so that so that games won't be as risky as they would if these games were just next-gen only and nothing more. So I'm fine with that. And another way that we are also seeing things change as game budgets increase is the price of some of these games. It does appear that $70 will be the average price of next-gen games once things get going with the PS5 and Xbox Series consoles. And to be honest, I'm fine with that. And I hate saying this, but when I look back on how much games were during the Super Nintendo days, when my parents were buying me games, some of those games were $80, and this was back during the mid-90s. So the fact that we are still, spending $60 for new games now, and that price was set back in 2005, 2006, it does seem that, now is the time for games to increase in price, especially with, as I said previously, how budgets have risen so much over these last 10 years or so. So $70 for the price of games, people were really hesitant for that change, but I think that more people are accepting of it now. I do also feel, though, that people will be more accepting of that rise in price if games held back on the microtransactions that we saw during the previous gen. Games such as NBA 2K, those games are filled with microtransactions, and yet, some of those games are still getting $10 increases in price. We'll see how we'll see how the microtransactions will change over the course of this generation that's coming up. But if things stay pretty much the same, while at the same time the entry to play a game goes up in price by $10, people are not gonna like that. So I do hope that this increase in price will help cause microtransactions to go down a little bit for people that get annoyed by them or feel that they can't play the game the way they want to because they are blocked, because they have to pay more to get the content that they expected when they first purchased the game. So that's definitely going to be an interesting topic and an interesting category to see within console video gaming, how that will change and progress over time. Overall, I do feel that this generation, outside of what I said previously, is also different in the fact that we have multiple options now. We have two models for the PS5. One is the original model and the other one is a digital only model. And then on the Xbox side, you have the Xbox Series X as well as the Xbox Series S. And this helps to make the transition to this current gen easier for people that might not be as hardcore as, say, me or probably you that's watching the video right now. So while on one side I do think that some people will still hold off, I do also think that we will see more people move to this current gen than we did in previous years. You know, previous years it was more core gaming heavy when it came to the first 2 to 3 years of the gen, and now I could see a large portion of the audiences of the predecessors for these consoles moving over to the new consoles by, say, 2023 or so, even with backwards compatibility. Because I mean, the prices of these consoles are honestly, they're pretty good. You know, you can say what you will about the $500 models, but the fact that you can get a next gen experience for $400 on the PS5 side or $300 on the Xbox side is a pretty big deal. All right, now when looking at the launch lineups of both consoles, as I talked about before, or I started to talk about before with Spider-Man on the PS5, the big game on the flip side, the big game on the Xbox side was supposed to be Halo Infinite, and that got delayed, unfortunately. But it was a good thing. The game is gonna get better due to the delay. And it's funny because when I look back on it, I was kind of iffy on whether or not it will be delayed, because news came out shortly after its premiere trailer or gameplay footage that the game was going to get a ray tracing update in the future, and ray tracing that really adds on to the graphics of next-gen games, especially games that are really big and open, such as Spider-Man on the PS5. You know, the reflections just bring the worlds to life. So that being a future update instead of being at launch made me question whether or not this game was going to get delayed, and then it did. But you know, it's good. And another thing that also made me question whether or not Halo Infinite would get delayed was the multiplayer beta. You know, we didn't hear anything about a multiplayer beta at all, and it just seemed weird for a game of that nature, especially a game that's going to be on previous Xbox consoles, to not have a multiplayer beta to make sure that things go smoothly when the game launches. So I do think that the delay will help the game out in the future. And you know, some people are saying that this greatly hurts the launch of the system, and it might hurt the launch of the system for people that were really looking forward to Halo. But in terms of just say the overall sales of the Xbox, the sales of the Xbox in 2020 are going to be, it's going to be fine. I mean, the system still has a lot of hype, and a lot of people want the Xbox Series X or S this holiday season. And it's funny too, because when you look back on systems that didn't do that well, such as say the Wii U, which was a huge flop, it sold 1/5 of what the Xbox One will total out to. And it's, you know, funny too, because Xbox One obviously had its own struggles during its first 2 years or so. So the fact that the Wii U sold 1/5 of that is pretty mind-blowing, especially since it's the successor to a really huge console that did very well. But anyway, you know, the Wii U, even though it did poorly, it still did pretty well during its launch. You know, it still sold well during its launch. So the Xbox has nothing to worry about in terms of its launch, because the hype for the Xbox Series X and S is far greater than the hype for the Wii U was when it launched many years ago. So when you add that in with the fact that Halo getting delayed will help the Xbox consoles in 2021, you know, instead of there being a huge gap in 2021 until the fall of 2021, you know, now you have a big game during the first half, and you're going to have multiple big games during the second half, you know, just on the basis of there being multiple big AAA multi-platform titles that will release during fall of 2021. So if anything, this helps out the Xbox to spread out its games and spread out its launch. You know, that is, if Halo Infinite does come out during the first half of 2021. As of right now, I think it will, but again, anything can change, especially as we go through COVID-19. You know, this pandemic has caused a lot of changes in the plans of pretty much any profession or any business out there. So, you know, that definitely also added on to Halo Soleil 2. So I'm still pumped for Halo Infinite. You know, in terms of graphics, you know, I was never a big Halo player when it came to me playing the game for graphics. You know, it was always about just the big open world and just the campaigns having that, you know, movie-like feel, you know, the music getting you pumped up, and, you know, you going through and battling with aliens, and it's just, you know, just that alone is what gets me going. You know, I should say I never played Halo for graphics. You know, to be honest, I never really thought that Halo was really that good looking of a game. The only time I felt that way was or I should say the only time I felt that way during Halo's peak was during the launch of the very first Halo back in 2001, you know, since that game looked amazing for its time. But Halo 3 wasn't a really good looking game. The game was on a console that was pushed for high definition graphics, but the game itself wasn't in high definition, and a lot of people don't know that. But the Halo 3 was not in high definition when it launched on the Xbox 360. So again, I never thought that Halo during its peak was a huge game that I, you know, was attracted to due to graphics. It was always about just the open world nature and the openness of the gameplay, and just, you know, going in and battling aliens, and just the sci-fi vibe of just the whole game series. You know, that's what attracted me to Halo, and I felt that they pretty much nailed that in the footage that they shown earlier, even though that footage could have been better. So the fact that the footage will be better gets me even more pumped to play the game when it will release as of right now in 2021. You know, anything can happen, it could get delayed again, but it does seem that things are pretty much set for 2021 at this point. So we'll see how things go with that launch, and we'll see if Halo can get back to being a really, really huge mainstream franchise. You know, it still is a huge game, but it did lose out some of its popularity. You know, kids today, they don't talk about Halo. You know, Halo is viewed by them as an old man's game, you know. So if, you know, this new Halo game, if Halo Infinite can bring a new generation of players into Halo, then that will be a big success, I feel. So on top of that, I will also say that I did get my DualSense controller pretty early. I got it a week ago, and I will say that this controller is far better than the DualShock 4. Some people felt that I was too critical of the DualShock 4, but I will say to all those people that if you held a DualSense controller, then you'll completely understand where I was coming from with the DualShock 4. This controller is so much better. The only thing that I will say is worse is the D-pad, you know, due to its plasticky, gummy texture. I do think that it will be a little bit worse for platformers and fighters. But outside of that, everything else about this controller is better than the DualShock 4. Now on top of this, I really want to test out the DualSense specific features, and I can't right now since I don't have a PS5 right now, but I'm going to get one soon. So I'm definitely looking forward to checking that out, because a lot of people said those features are really, really cool and pretty game changing if they're implemented the right way. So looking forward to testing that out too. So that's pretty much it. That's pretty much all I have to say. You know, now it's time to wait for the consoles to come in and then hook them up and play them. So hopefully you guys will be watching the future videos where I'll be talking more about these new consoles coming soon. The game plan is that we'll release videos in about a week or two that focus on some of the games that I really enjoyed during this gen that's about to end. And then I'll use that as a bridge to get into the next generation of gaming, you know, videos on that, videos on my impressions of the PS5 as well as the Xbox Series X after I played them for about 3 weeks or so. So be on the lookout for that. And then with those videos, I will then connect them to the next season of D-Pad, which will be totally focused on that generation of gaming alongside the new games that will be coming out to the Nintendo Switch in 2021. So that's the plan. You know, it's been a while. I am trying to determine what changes to make for certain things, especially with COVID. You know, due to COVID, I can't do the Brad versus Jordan battles like I did in the past, and I do have plans for that, and some of those plans also involve you guys too being implemented into the battles. So be on the lookout for that. I think you guys will enjoy what I do in terms of having you guys be a part of the battle. So news about that should come next month. So be on the lookout for that too, all right guys? And be sure to message me and talk to me online, and we can go about what we feel, or how we feel I should say, about these new consoles, and see if our opinions match or if they differ in any way, all right? Should be a pretty fun time. So I'll see you guys for the next video, and until then, be on the lookout, subscribe, and I'll see you for more videos on these systems that are gonna come out soon. All right guys, bye.